Right. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have the fantastic Caitlin from the Cyphers Agency, who has been our incredible web and branding partner over the last 2 years. And they have really helped us with our accessible communication. So we invited them to share with us, and they gratefully said yes. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And Caitlin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited to do this presentation today. Like Heidi said, we've, worked with Coordinating Center for all of the new website needs, and it's certainly been a journey. We've gone on it together, and, it's been just as much of a learning experience for me as it has been my team and Heidi and Renee and everyone over at the Coordinating Center. So, there's a billion things I could say about accessible communication, and hopefully you walk away today knowing a little bit more than you have before. So, with that, let's talk about the power of accessible communications. Creating digital experiences that work for people of all abilities. And that's really the key thing there. Okay, so let's start at a very basic level. What is accessible communication? And the easiest way that I can think to show this to you guys is with a quick example. All right, let's look at this lovely text here. Ouch. That is not fun to look at. I mean, I think we can all sit here and look at this and say, okay, this is an example of how, but it takes a while. It's confusing. It's not pleasing to the eye. This is just one of the many examples of accessibility and communication and what someone with a different ability might see when they visit a site that's not accessible or try to find information on the internet that's not accessible. So think about that as we move forward here. Like I said, when things aren't structured properly, you've got headings and spacing and language that everyone can understand. It feels really overwhelming and difficult to process, especially with those who have a cognitive disability, reading disability, anything like that. All right, so at the base of it, I think of accessibility being about the people because it really is. And again, this is where this really came into play with everyone at the coordinating center because the coordinating center is really about people. And that's why this really worked very well. So, having accessible communication ensures that all the information on your site within your company is perceivable, understandable, able to be easily navigated and truly usable by everyone. And this can support a wide range of people with varying abilities. I mean, there's a very long list. These are just a few, whether you have maybe a visual impairment, some hearing loss, cognitive disability, mobility challenges, an injury that maybe is just temporary, an aging related challenge, and there's just about a gazillion more. So this is just a few. Okay, let's talk about this in the sense of the internet and that age that we were in, because there is a digital barrier, unfortunately. A lot of websites are not compatible with assistive technologies. They're not keeping accessibility in mind when it comes to the page layout and page design. And, to maybe a normal person, that doesn't seem like it would be a big deal. Okay. Sure, they chose green in the background instead of a different color. You might not think anything of that, but really it does make a difference. So if you're not thinking of that in the design process, in the process of uploading any content you have, people aren't going to be able to read it, navigate, complete any forms, really find the services that they need, or even be able to contact someone from your team to say, hey, what the heck? I can't find what I need to find. So they might not even be able to do that. So it really is a huge, huge barrier. Okay, an ongoing process. I wanted to highlight this because, again, as we saw during our web development process, this is not something that you can just check a box tasks and say, okay, I've done the accessibility things I need to do. Let's move on and forget about it. It has to be an ongoing process that you are always thinking about. So, our question here becomes when we are putting new content onto our site, how are we keeping that accessible? How are we continuing that process and making that deliberate choice? Okay, so here's a couple of ways, and this is certified, gotten the check mark from our in-house professional, Christina, who I know Heidi knows very well, but she is our web guru. She is the one who is, she's done webinars and trained herself on accessibility. So these have been given her stamp of approval. These are the top 6 things that you want to make sure you're doing on a very basic level when you're doing new content for your site. So this first one here, plain, clear language. You want to make sure that you're keeping it. Usually we say best practice is between a 6th and 8th grade reading level, just because, if you have someone who does have a cognitive disability, some of those big thesaurus types words are not going to really drive home the point you're trying to make. The next one here, which I do have an example of later on, so you'll see that it's a little easier to see than to hear, but alt text to images. So if you have someone who is scrolling through your site and maybe is visually impaired, you see an image of a lovely family sitting together at a dinner table having a wonderful time. They don't see that. So that's not driving the point home as much as you want it to. So we want to have alt text on our images. So when they are navigating the website with their reader, it will say, this is an image of a family who is sitting down at dinner together, as opposed to maybe it just says, here's an image. Doesn't do the same thing. So we want to add that alt text to our images. The next one is relying on color alone. I know in the world of graphic design, and we have a lot of designers over here from our agency that are really big on aesthetics and what looks good, but unfortunately, sometimes what looks good is not going to be accessible. So we want to really avoid using colors that clash with each other, maybe using a text color on a background that isn't as easy to see. That is really not going to be good for, again, someone who has a disability, maybe a visual impairment. It's not going to look very nice to them. Our next one is providing captions for videos. I feel like a lot of people do this nowadays, and if you're anything like me, I have to have subtitles on for everything. I just like to read it when I see it as well. So a lot of people do this nowadays, and YouTube kind of will give you auto-generated captions as well. But you really want to make sure if you are uploading any sort of video to your site and adding it to your content, you want to make sure that that is a thing and it's able to be toggled on and off very easily. The next is our screen reader compatibility, which I touched on already. But for those who do need some sort of device to navigate, you want to make sure that your site's able to do that. So I know we probably all use our mouses a lot to scroll around, but some people do not have that ability. So you want to make sure that you can easily navigate every page of your site using just your keyboard or with assistive technologies. And then last but not least, I also have an example of this later on, but our consistent heading hierarchy. You want to make sure you have subheadings that are bold and really distinctively cut up your content. Because again, when people are coming on with screen readers or maybe their vision's not great, that is just really going to help drive home what you're really trying to say with that content. Okay, and now the flip side of this, let's look at some common mistakes. And of course, how we can fix them. Okay, first one here, and this is my favorite part because I am a visual person through and through, so this helps me to kind of see it. This is what I was just referencing with the headings and the clear distinction of the hierarchy. So, as you can see with the one on the left here, that's kind of an example of what you don't want to do. There's not a lot of spacing, there's not a clear relationship between all the content, just kind of all jumbled. And, with things like WordPress or maybe some other platforms that we use a lot, sometimes if you format a post and you just copy paste the information in, it's going to spit it out like this. Not the best for accessibility. So you want to do something like on the right where there is more spacing. You've got everything not as tight together with that kerning, and then there is a clear relationship. So really separating it and making sure that this is the information under this heading. It's not too tight with the image, not too tight with the lines above and below it. That is just a very, very simple design thing that you can do to make sure we're doing the accessible option here. Okay, our next example, contrast. So the one on the left here, you can see that's in more of a gray text and we're on a white background here. So you can read it, sure, but I mean, some of us might already be leaning in here to try to read and see if we can do it. So it's definitely not as easy. And I can tell you right now, if I was a foot away from the screen more than I am now and I didn't have my glasses, I can't read that. So even on a basic level of, some people don't have 20/20 vision, this is something that we can do to make that accessible for them. All right, and then here's our alt text example, which is really a great one to see visually, I think. So on the left here, this is the one we don't want to do. It's very uninformative. So the alt text on this, the image obviously, charging the phone, connect the power to a power outlet using the cable and power adapter provided. So this person put the alt text as charging phone. It's okay, but does it really tell you what that copy is telling you? Not so much. So on the right, we have the version that you want to go for, and you really just want to be as descriptive as possible. So you've got that same copy there, but this alt text is plug cable into the bottom edge of the phone. So if someone were to just hear that, it gives a much clearer picture than the one on the left, where we just say charging phone. Okay, charging phone, what do I care? That doesn't mean much. So it's definitely not something that's visible on your screen, but like I said, if someone comes across with a reader, it will say the alt text. So we want to make sure we're doing that for every image on your site, which of course is a big lift, but it makes all the difference in the end. Okay, so now we are going to see how we put all of this into action for the Coordinating Center's new site here. Okay, so this is just one example of a screen grab from the new site, and there are three examples that we haven't talked about here already of some accessibility features. Okay, first one here, the translation at the top. This is very important on a very basic level of you have someone who doesn't speak English, so they need to be able to see the site in the language that they can speak. So you want to have a very apparent option for people to choose how they're viewing the site. And that's why we put it right at the top there. You can toggle it very easily. And I've even had this issue before, talking to maybe a foreign publication and their website is all in Dutch or German. And of course, unfortunately, I do not speak Dutch or German. So you want it to be very, very easy to find the language button and change it into something you can understand, which I have unfortunately had the experience in the past of it's not so easy to find. And then it's, how do I even email them? I can't even find the email button because it's not my language. All right, our next one is a little smaller here on the side, but this is very important. It's an ADA compliant little widget tool that we have here. And in the past, this had to be a lot larger and a lot more pronounced, which is something we had talked about when we created the site is this okay? Is it big enough? It's kind of small there on the side, but this is something very common now that a lot of sites will have. It allows you to change not only the color if you're having contrast issues, but the text size as well. So that is very helpful for those who just might need some quick changes to be able to absorb the content. And then lastly, this is one of the reasons why I picked this slide here is because we have this lovely video that plays when you go to our careers page. But with that, like I mentioned earlier, there needs to be some different options that we offer right up front. So as you can see there, first thing is you have to have a pause. It can be a little disorienting for someone to just open a page and a video starts blaring at them. I'm sure no one likes that regardless. So there has to be a really quick, easy option for you to pause and play. And then the one next to it is the actual video transcript. So, if you just want to see it all laid out, you can click there and it easily takes you there. And then, like we talked about, sound and captions, that third button there will take you right to YouTube and you can view it there, which YouTube is usually very accessible and very up to date on those accessibility features. So, a lot of people that have been dealing with this for a long time automatically do just want to go to YouTube, which is why we added that there. All right, and then another thing that, to me when I was learning about this, I just thought this was a good practice in general when you're doing web design, which it is. However, having the different web versus mobile views is also very important to accessibility. You don't want to just assume that someone can be on their laptop and looking at your website that way. They might only be able to access their phone. The phone might be easier for them to navigate or see because they can hold it closer. So you have to be very, very mindful of that from an accessibility standpoint, which is something I didn't know before. So as you can see on the left here, we do have the website. We've got that big, beautiful mega menu there with all the programs and services, and that's how that looks. But if you look on the right, you'll see a screenshot from my phone where I was looking at it online, and obviously the menu is going to look a little different. So that's something that our designers have to think about because it's almost like, I have to do the whole web, but then I have to switch to my phone and deal with the views of that on every page as well because you want it to translate. And a lot of times, I'm sure we've all been on a website that, you get on it on your phone, it loads funky. You're like, why am I not seeing the whole thing? I can't scroll. So it doesn't make it easy. And that is definitely something that we had to think about as well. And the bigger picture of this that I want to tie it all back to, I know I touched on it a little bit when I started, but this is really important to not just everyone, but especially the coordinating center because of the types of clients that you serve and the communities that you deal with. This is something that is only going to strengthen the mission of equality and leveling the playing field, empowering those communities to really come to our website and say, yeah, this is something that works for me. This is something that I can navigate really easily. This is something that I don't feel intimidated when I log in and I just need to find a piece of info real quick. Again, nothing upsets me more when you're dealing with something like insurance or scheduling a doctor's appointment and you log onto that portal and it's just so hard to navigate. You're just like, I just need to get my medicine, my prescription. They don't make it easy. And that is something that really, really, really causes that barrier and something that, we need to be thinking about moving forward and it needs to be something that's becoming more of a checklist item when we are doing web work, design work, really anything, even down to social media and how we present that. So it has been a project that has been really, really great for us to work on because, like I said, not only have I learned something, my team has learned, we've gotten to do some really great things and things that you don't think about are really there for accessibility purposes. So it's been really wonderful, and we're constantly learning. And, the accessibility guidelines, even for ADA, have changed drastically in the past decade. So they're going to keep changing and keep evolving and hopefully creating more tools for, those types of communities and just easier access and navigation all around. So that is really, really the point that I wanted to drive home today and kind of share some examples. But I think that's all of the big content I have. Oh, yes, my last line here. This is something one of our designers really likes to drive home. When communication is accessible, inclusion becomes a reality. Again, we really want someone to be able to come to the site and be like, I need one of those that was easy buttons because that's really what we want. Oh, that was so easy, so non-painful. I wasn't frustrated, and now I'm directly in contact with the program director that I need to move forward with this. So,
Thank you, Caitlin. Definitely, and you talked a lot about the web, but this is like you said, everywhere. So even like PowerPoint, I know when we do a lot of presentations, I have to go in and do all the alt tags in PowerPoint. InDesign for a designer has a lot of built-in accessibility features. We've touched on PDFs, adding PDFs to there's stuff that you didn't touch on. There's so many different aspects. Like we have a search bar. We never had a search bar on our website. And that's really incredible because it really helps people find what they need quicker. And so on the back end, we have to make sure we're putting all that information in. So when we're mini Google, like we have to put in what we think they might say to find a community enrichment or find this webinar that we're talking about right now. I'm going to open it up.
absolutely.
I'm going to stop recording. If anyone has any questions, um, feel free to unpause or add them to the chat.